Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. Today's story is the Duaa of Faiza. It's about a little girl and her beautiful garden in the backyard and how she really wanted to grow a flower. And so she couldn't do so without asking Allah for help. The Duaa of Faiza, written by Nu'man. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In Faiza's backyard, there was a beautiful garden. It was the most wonderful garden that she could ever wish for. Her father would work in the gardening shop during the week, and on the weekends he would bring out his gardening tools and the soil to work on his garden. He would spend a long time taking care of his garden. He would cut the weeds so they don't choke the flowers and to make sure that they're getting enough soil and water. And if it happened that the flowers weren't getting enough water, they would die. So he cut all of the weeds in the garden, and he would dig holes in the ground, and he would put seeds inside of the holes. Very carefully, he would cover the seeds with soil, and he would put a little bit of water for them. Sometimes he would just go outside and look at his flowers, and he would touch the petals gently, and he would just be so happy to see his hard work being paid off with Allah's help. And he would say, Alhamdulillah, hada min fadli Rabbi. This is thanks to Allah's wonderful blessings upon me. Faiza was allowed to play in the garden where her father was working on it. Some days after she finished her homework, her and her mother would go and have a tea party outside in the garden. They would bring the fuzzy light blue blanket that Faiza's grandmother gave her for Eid, and they would spread it on the grass under the oak tree. They would put the teapot, the teacups, and a plate of goodies and delicacies on the blanket. Sometimes Faiza would help her mom make the sandwiches, and her mother would cut them into circles, squares, and triangles. They would bring those to the party too, and after the tea party, Faiza would skip around the garden happily, and she would stop to smell each flower. Look at how she's smelling the flowers. Her father taught her how to touch the flowers, and she was very careful to be gentle with them. Sometimes, Faiza's father would pick out a flower for her that she especially liked. He would cut it at the stem, and he would give it to her, and she would hold it very carefully in her hands. And she would run her fingers along the leaves and the petals. Her mother would help her find a vase to put the flower in so that it wouldn't die. Faiza would put some water in the vase, and she would gently place the flower inside and sit the flower on the windowsill in her room to get some sun. Each morning after she prayed Fajr with her parents, she would run back to her room and check on her flower. She would check on it one more time just before she went to school. One day, Faiza decided that she wanted to grow a flower by herself. Many times she had watched her father put seeds inside of the holes that he dug and how he would take care of the flowers and watch them grow. She knew that she would need a home for the flowers, and that she would need soil, she would need seeds, and that she would need to water them every day. And she already knew the best place for the flower to grow, where it would get all the sunlight, and it would be by the windowsill in her room. So from there, she would be able to watch her flower grow from a seed into a plant, insha'Allah. So she went to her mom was in the kitchen, and she asked her, Mama, I want to grow a flower like Baba, like he does in his garden. Can I, please? Her mom smiled down at her saying, I don't see why not, Faiza, but go ask Baba to make sure it's okay. Faiza was so happy. She screamed, Yay! I get to grow a flower! And she ran to her father. Stop running the house, Faiza, her mother yelled at her from the kitchen. Her father thought it was a great idea for Faiza to grow her own flower. But Faiza, he told her, growing a flower is a serious thing. You can't water the flower one day and then forget it the next. So she told her father, No, Abby, I promise, I won't let the flower die. Well, said her father, scratching his head thoughtfully, if you promise to take good care of your flower, I suppose it would be okay, inshallah. Faiza leaped in the air and screamed, "Yay! I get to grow my own flower! A flower! My very own flower!" She raced back to the kitchen to tell her mother. She was so eager to get started right away. She heard her father scream, "Say inshallah, Faiza!" down the hallway after her. Still running, she turned back and yelled, "Inshallah!" She reached the kitchen just as her mother was coming into the hallway, and she crashed right into her. "Faiza," her mother said to her in a tired voice, "how many times have you been told? Don't run in the house." Faiza put her finger in her mouth and started thinking. "A lot?" she said. "Exactly," her mother said. So what is it that's so important that you broke the rule and have come running down the hall so fast?" Faiza began moving and bouncing around restlessly. She flapped her hands in the air in every direction. "Baba! Baba said I can grow my own flower!" She said. And he said it's okay. So can we go to the shop and to buy a pot for my flower today, please? Her mother told her, "We'll see, Faiza. Maybe later today, inshallah." And she handed her the salad so that she could put it on the table. "Here, use some of that energy you've got and go help around the house." Faiza took the bowl and asked her mom, "So, will we go today to get the pot?" "Inshallah, Faiza," she told her. Faiza walked away nervous about getting to the dollar store before it closed. But, as promised, later in the day, Faiza's mother took her to the dollar store to get a pot for her plants. She looked at the flower plots for a long time before she decided on one. The one that she picked was just right for her new plant, inshallah. It was pearl white and felt like sand when she rubbed her hand over it. On the side of the flower pot was a blue and white lighthouse sitting on a cliff looking out at the sea. There were pink, yellow, and purple flowers growing in the garden in front of the lighthouse. The blue-green sea was painted all over the bottom of the flower pot. She thought, "My new plant will be like this pot, inshallah. It's the prettiest one here. Look how beautiful it is." They bought the flower pot and took it home. Faiza's father took her into the garage and helped her put soil in the flower pot. She carefully put 3 holes with her thumb into the soil and then placed 3 seeds into each one of them. She took a little bit more of the dirt and covered the seeds. Faiza put a little bit of water on each seed and ran with the pot to put it on her windowsill. Every morning and every night for a week, Faiza would check on her pot, but nothing. She didn't see anything. There was not a single flower. Disappointed, Faiza went to ask her father what was wrong. "Baba, I've checked on my flower pot for a whole 7 days, but my flower still hasn't started to grow. What's wrong with it, Baba?" Her father put the Quran on the table and rubbed his beard. He said in a worried voice. "Perhaps I'd better go take a look at it, inshallah." In her room, her father peered over her flower pot, and he said, "Yes, just as I thought." "What, Baba? What's wrong?" asked Faiza, scooting under his arm and taking a peek on her flower pot. "Well," he started, "I think that this is a case of a little girl who hasn't been making dua. You know, Faiza, nothing happens without Allah's permission. So if we just forget that it is Allah that makes flowers grow and we don't make dua, this is what's going to happen, a flower that doesn't grow." Faiza kept looking at her flower that wouldn't grow. "I never thought of that," she said. Her father felt the soil with his fingers, and he found it damp and said, "Maybe that's why your flower hasn't been growing. Wallahu a'lam." This is them looking over the flower pot together. "Is it too late? If I make dua to Allah, will He make it grow faster?" Her father looked at the flower pot on the windowsill and he said, "Well, Faiza, I don't know if it's too late, but the best thing you can do is to make dua to Allah and see what happens, inshallah. Faiza told herself that she would make dua for her flower until it was time to go to sleep. She sat in her room making dua for her flower, but then she got hungry and she went to eat dinner. When she came back to go to bed, she checked on her flower again, but there was still nothing. That night, she made dua to Allah until she fell asleep. In the morning, her mother found her curled up on her side with her hands bent in supplication. Faiza made dua for 3 days, but each time she looked into the flower pot, she only saw the wet dirt. Frustrated, she went to the kitchen and asked her mother, "Mama, I've been making dua. Why isn't my flower growing?" And see, this is her in her room making dua. She said, "I've been making dua to Allah for 4 days, but my flower still won't grow. What am I doing wrong?" Her mother sat her down at the table and said, "Let's see. You've been making dua to Allah for 4 days, but your flower still has not grown? Habibti, sometimes Allah will not answer the dua of one of his slaves if that slave is committing sins. So ask Allah to forgive you for any mistakes you may have made. And sometimes, Faiza, Allah loves to hear his slave making dua to him, so he won't answer the dua right away. He wants to keep hearing his slave's voice. Isn't that just beautiful?" Faiza thought about the mistakes she may have made. She thought to herself. Today, I did pray Asr, but I prayed it late, and it was qada. I didn't want to stop playing with Asma, so I waited and waited, and then it was time for Maghrib. Faiza felt bad, and she said, "Astaghfirullah," quietly. She thought of any of the other things that she might have done that Allah did not like. So she stood up and kissed her mom on the cheek. See? And she told her, "Jazakillahu khair, Mama," and walked back to her room. A few minutes later, her mother knocked on the door and peeked her head in. "Don't give up, Habibti. Keep making dua. Inshallah, he will answer you." That night, when her family prayed Isha, Faiza made dua for her plants in every sujood. It was so hard not to rush through her Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times because she wanted to make dua. As soon as they finished the salah, Faiza rushed back to her room to check on her flower. She opened the door slowly and walked over to the windowsill very quietly. She looked down and into the flower pot, and her eyes grew big. She put her hands on her cheeks and her mouth made a big O shape, but no sound came out. There, in the middle of her flower pot, was a little green stem that had just started to grow. Her dua had been answered, finally. In a voice that was barely a whisper, Faiza said, "Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah." She raised her hands to her shoulders and said, "Allahu Akbar," and then made sujood and thanked Allah. Faiza realized that whenever she needed something, whenever she wanted something, all she had to do was make dua and ask Allah. Look at her beautiful flower. Thank you so much for watching. I want to know, how many istighfar can you make in a day? Can you make 10, 20, 50? Make as much istighfar as you can. After all, it's Ramadan, so you might as well. And I also have a dua for us to learn today, and it is Allahumma ghfir li wa li walidayya wa lil muslimin, which means, "Oh Allah, forgive me, forgive my parents and the Muslims." Again, say with me, Allahumma ighfir li wa li walidayya wa lil muslimin. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.